Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be part of this really important forum today. As you know, housing is a critical issue for us here in Chester County. Our residents need homes that are affordably priced, that fit in the community, and that will work for them over their lifetimes. Homes also need to be in smart locations near infrastructure and community facilities. Chester County's comprehensive plan, Landscapes 3, encourages housing in the right locations, seeking to balance growth and preservation while embracing the unique characteristics that make our county a cherished place to live, work, and play. As the county was developing Landscapes 3, it became clear that our residential needs are changing. We're growing in numbers significantly, which means the need for more housing. Our senior population and the number of 1 to 2 person households are increasing, which leads to the need for adaptable and accessible homes, along with a desire for smaller homes that are affordable for people living alone or on a fixed income. Chester County's existing housing stock is not currently meeting the changing needs caused by growth and changes in our demographics, which is the key reason why we are here today. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Maxwell.
Thank you so much, Chair. It's great to be with this group. I wish I could be there in person. I'm away at a conference, but a joy to be speaking with you nonetheless. As Commissioner Moskowitz said, there are not enough housing units to meet the general demand, especially for our projected population growth between now and 2050. Existing homes may not match up to resident needs because of layout, size, price, design, location, and accessibility. Chester County's medium home sale prices have been steadily and often quickly increasing. Last year, the median sales price for housing in Chester County was $375,000, the highest countywide median in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Many factors contribute to rising home costs, including land and material labor, as well as an undersupply of new units and development barriers. Rising home prices are causing challenges across the county. Many employers are struggling to attract employees who cannot afford current housing prices. Residents transitioning from renting to first-time home ownership are often unable to afford to remain here. Essential workers face financial burdens of either high housing costs in the county or high transportation costs from commuting from outside the county in. As home prices continue to rise, more Chester County families are becoming cost burdened by the amount of their paycheck that it takes to pay the rent or mortgage. Municipalities in every part of the county will need to address housing challenges to ensure vibrant, safe, inclusive, and healthy neighborhoods. Today's A+ Homes Forum focuses on one tool, missing middle housing, that can help municipalities address these important challenges. Thank you all very much.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. I'm Brian Allaire. I'm the Executive Director of the Chester County Planning Commission, and I'm really happy to have our annual housing forum here. It is an ongoing topic that we really have folded into everything we do at the Chester County Planning Commission. And in our work program, we emphasize affordable housing, accessible housing, attractive housing, all the different elements of A+ homes that we need to have. And so next year, you'll be hearing this afternoon from a couple staff members about our housing efforts this past year and a little bit that we did the prior year. And next year, we'll be continuing to look at housing, and we will be trying to tackle the issue about housing location issues. But as I mentioned at the beginning, we're really focused on everything we do. So we do subdivision and land development reviews of every proposal that comes into Chester County. And a common thing we will say in these is, hey, how about considering some affordable housing? Or how about the zoning ordinance you're proposing? How about making it a little more diverse in the housing that you allow in this district? So we're really trying to fold this into our work. We go and we help local municipalities with their comprehensive plans or with their zoning ordinances. And in that work, we also will bring up this issue of how can we have housing that really fits in the community. It folds into our transportation work we do. So how can we have transportation facilities that serve our higher density housing areas? So it's really kind of incorporated into everything we do. So you will be hearing more about that later on. And we really encourage you to check out our website and our services that are on the website to learn more about what we can do for local communities, and we can work with others who are advocating for housing. At this stage, I'd like to turn it over to Dolores Colligan, the Acting Director of the Department of Community Development.
Thanks,
Dolores.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here today. My name is Dolores Colligan, and I am the Acting Director of the Chester County Department of Community Development. Today, I've been asked to talk to you about and share examples of affordable housing developments created throughout the county. I want to share with you the primary sources of funding that the Department of Community Development administers specifically for the development of affordable housing. So first off, the Home Investment Partnerships Program from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development is the primary source of federal funds to support the development of affordable housing. The county's annual location averages about $1.1 million. Home funds are used to fund a wide range of activities, including building, buying, and or rehabilitating affordable housing for rent or homeownership opportunities. Home funds provide gap funding for affordable rental developments funded by the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency's Low Income Tax Credit Program. DCD awards are typically in the range of $700,000 to $1 million. And the Home Investment Partnerships Program must serve households at or below 60% of median area income. The Community Development Block Grant funds are also used to support municipal infrastructure improvements in eligible low to moderate income neighborhoods and can be leveraged to support infrastructure needs for affordable housing development. Housing Trust Program funds may serve as a required matching source for home funding and are less restrictive than federal resources. DCD facilitates a request for proposals process to solicit competitive applications for entitlement funds on a 2-year cycle. The funding round for 2023-2024 funding will open in April 2022. So now I'd like to share with you the inventory of affordable housing developments that we've invested in throughout the county. So here is Pickney Hill Commons, AKA Melton Center Apartments, right here around the block from us. It will be known as Pickney Hill Commons when they dedicate and open the building. As he said, it is located here in Westchester Borough. The developer is Church Housing Corp. You can see it is general occupancy with 51 units and what the unit mix will be. The county's investment into this project is $850,000. And this will be renting up come spring of 2022. During the week of December 11th, Pickney Commons will have an on-site pre-application. They will ask people to line up in person and or pull an application online. But if they're there in person, they'll get a pre-application, they'll get a number. They'll be able to complete that application on site and hand that application in. That application will be reviewed for eligibility, and if they are eligible, they'll be called in for a full application process by the number that they were given on that day that they lined up. We don't know the date yet of that week. It's sometime one day, the week of December 11th. When we do, we'll help publicize that. Not moving. There it goes. Red Clay Manor. Red Clay Manor is also in construction right now. These are recent pictures that were taken by our construction coordinator in the borough of Kennett Square. Delaware Valley Development Corporation is the developer. As Commissioner Moskowitz mentioned, we do need 1 and 2 bedroom affordable rental units for our individuals and most specifically our senior population. So this is a senior housing development with 60 units. There's the unit mix. The county's investment into this project is $920,000. And as you can see, this development had to go through 3 sites before they found this site. They were awarded their tax credits in 2016. And what is that, 7 years later? We'll have this development up and running and ready to fill come spring of 2022. So affordable housing takes a long time to develop. Phoenixville Commons just awarded October 14th, I believe was the day that PHFA made their low-income tax credit announcements. So just awarded tax credits. I believe this project had to go in at least twice for PHFA tax credits, 2 years, before 3 times, Chris, 3 times. Borough of Phoenixville, the Hankin Group will develop this senior development for 62 years plus, 50 units, all 1 bedroom. Didn't go. There we go. The Willows of Valley Run. Again, we were very successful, Chester County, in this year's PHFA tax round. This too was awarded first time in tax credits this past October. This will be developed in Callan Township, right on Lincoln Highway in Thorndale. The developer is the Ingerman Group. Much needed general housing, general occupancy type housing, a good mix of different size units. This is only phase 1 of this development. This development will be built out to be 120 units eventually. Phase 2 will be another 60 units. And then you can see the county's funding, the investment that the county has in this development. This is a very exciting development. We haven't had general occupancy built in the county in a really long time. No picture here. This is an example of a development that's fully funded. This is Church Housing Corporation. They had site control of a property in East Pikeland Township. They went in for the zoning ordinance changes and they were declined. The municipality will not give them the ordinance changes that they need to develop on the property that they had selected. And therefore, Church Housing Corporation is back to the drawing board to find a site. Again, disappointment, a fully funded application, a fully funded project that can't happen right now. The county does have a commitment of $800,000 into this project, and they have tax credits since August 2020. Yes, sir.
It's my understanding, when you prepare the application, you have to have zoning. And I understand the supervisors had a change of mind.
The municipality had a change of mind.
Correct.
Yes,
But you had a commitment
we did.
and they backed out.
Yes,
Just-
exactly.
Just to set the record.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And then we also work with nonprofit developers such as Habitat for Humanity. And here are 2, developments that have been ongoing. Cambrian Terrace actually was a Hope 6 project that began in 2004. There has been 80 townhomes. 80 townhomes will be eventually there built. There's 5 units remaining to be built. And they have all been sold. The units that are up are home ownerships, first-time homeowners through the Habitat program. And this development borders is in the city of Coatesville. There's 69 units in Coatesville, and there's 11 units in the borough of South Coatesville. That's the entire development of 80 units. And then Fuller Meadows is currently under construction. You can see from that picture, they're still building this out. It is in the municipality of the borough of West Grove. This will be 40 townhomes for home ownership. The county's investment is $2.5 million. And we have had 5 units sold, and there are 9 additional homeowners that will be coming online pretty soon. So we're very happy with that too, in an area that we haven't been able to build affordable housing. So besides putting new units on the market or in the market, we also work on prevention efforts, keeping people in the homes that they're already in. And one significant program funding that has come our way is from the United States Treasury. the Emergency Rental and Utility Assistance Program. I left some flyers and postcards on the table when you walked in. The county has been awarded to our department over $40 million of treasury funds to support those folks that are in rent arrearages or utility arrearages and in jeopardy of being evicted because of that. So this is a slide that markets that program. To access that program, a tenant or a landlord can access the program. A landlord can apply for their outstanding rents if their tenants are not. You call 211 and follow the prompts as noted there. And we could provide funding starting back from March 13th, 2020, up to 12 months in arrearages and 3 months of pay forward rent. To help folks stabilize in their units. So if you know renters, if you're in a situation where you're a landlord and you have renters who owe you, please call 211 and get yourself applied for this program. Currently, there are 2,800 pending open applications being processed every day. Even this number was from this morning. So that's changed. We get up towards 30 to 40 calls a day for this assistance. But as of this morning's count, there were 2,800 pending applications in some status of processing. And as of this morning, we've had over 1,500 households paid through this program and kept them housed as a result of this program. And then finally, if you do not receive our e-newsletters, this is the way we announce any of our funding opportunities, events, news, is through our e-newsletters. So please visit our site at chesco.org, ccdcd, and work with us. So thank you. Any questions? That's it for me. Great. Thank you very much.
Just quick, one question. On the housing assistance, you said you're getting like, what, 3,800 do you have or something?
There's 2,800 applications in process right now by 5 different organizations.
What is the source of most of those applications? Are they individuals or are they landlords or?
It's a mix, mostly individuals, but landlords can apply as well.
Do you have landlords apply?
Yes, we do. Yep, that apply directly. A lot of the multi-unit, landlords that own apartment buildings may be applying on behalf of several people in the building that owe them rent. That's what we seem to see. Some landlords just, independent, that might just own a couple of homes too. But it's mostly households that are applying. But landlords can apply directly as well.
Are you considering incentivizing or trying to promote missing middle housing types? These weren't missing middle housing types.
Well, our role in the county is to develop affordable housing. And the federal funds that we have is to do so. So, the developers design.
Which is great. I just wondered if that was also being entitled event, if there was also a push for that from you.
Well, I guess yes. We're all partners in this. That's why I'm up here. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? I'm going to be here for the whole time.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of room for questions at the end as well. And so we're going to have 2 more presentations, and any other questions, if we could save those to the end, just so that we make sure we have time for everybody. So my name is Libby Horwitz. I am the Housing and Economic Development Planner at the Chester County Planning Commission. And I'm going to be talking about what's our type, missing middle housing in Chester County. This is actually the 3rd report. It's our presentation of a report that will be going online. We do currently have 2 other reports already online. They did just go on today. So we have one that's going to be on the cost of housing and one that's going to be on planning for an aging population. So we're going to share those links in the chat if anybody's interested in those to check those out. All right, so I want to start a little bit with the context and why we're talking about this in the first place. We have some great housing in Chester County, so why are we planning for it? Why does it matter? We're having a bunch of demographic shifts. First and foremost, we're having an increase in population pretty drastically. DVRPC did just come out with new population projections. And while they're a little bit lower than the prior projections, we're still expecting about a 22% increase in population. That's about 528,000 people. There's also going to be changes in demographics in that population. So you're not going to be seeing as much of this nuclear family, by which I mean 2 parents and children, which used to be the norm. Nationwide in 1950, 43% of households were nuclear families. Now only 20% are. And these are being replaced by a few different types of demographic shifts. First of all, you're seeing increases in 1 and 2 person households. And that might be single people, that might be empty nesters, all different types of households. You're also seeing an aging population at a greater rate than previous. By 2034 nationwide, older adults will exceed children for the first time in US history. And that's no different in Chester County, that's happening too. Here's a graph of the projection of population of 55 and older and 65 and older, both expected to increase pretty drastically in the next 20 years. And these demographic changes are going to have some pretty drastic effects on housing as well. So to accommodate that new population growth, the county is going to need about 51,500 new homes. And those homes are likely going to need different configurations as well. They're going to need to be some smaller homes, closer to amenities, and also might have access to caregivers nearby or in the same unit. There's also going to be some needs for different affordability and different changes in prices on these houses. Chester County is one of the highest housing prices this is median in the state. So you're seeing that graph is going to be the 2017 and earlier data. And you see that orange line, we are significantly higher. In 2020, the median price was $375,000. That was a $25,000 increase from 2019, which was around $350,000. And that's expected to increase even further next year. In addition to sales prices, that's true happening with rents as well. We've been seeing increases in rents. In 2005, average rent was $936. That increased to about $1,300 in 2019. And that's causing people to be cost burdened. And this chart is like a little bit of a misnomer, I think. It looks like it's showing that less people are cost burdened, but I actually think that a lot of that is people being priced out of the county. If you're looking at the data in our housing report, our 2020 housing report, and we'll also put that link online as well, so you get a little bit of information about what's happening this year in housing. There's a less of a supply in the lower brackets are happening as far as those home sales. And that's a further decrease from 2019 to 2018. And this is really going to continue to be exacerbated by income not keeping pace with housing prices. You see that orange line is going to be those median housing price, which has been steadily increasing, and the median income has been much slower in increasing. We're already seeing issues, as the commissioners mentioned. We're seeing issues with employers not being able to find housing for employees and not being able to attract employees. We're seeing first-time homeowners not being able to afford houses. So looking at specifically what we mean and who can afford housing, these are just some different common occupations in the county that we pulled out and their average income and what they can afford. Again, this is going to be single family households. So an accountant who makes around $68,000 can only afford 10% of homes. Truck transport, about 5%. Greenhouse, that's going to be mushroom workers largely, 3%. And a school worker, about 2% of homes. So what the county is doing with this, we do have some planning efforts underway, and we're primarily guided by the Landscapes 3 comprehensive plan, which seeks to balance preservation and growth. And the Landscapes map is the county's guide for growth and rural preservation. We have both growth areas as well as rural resource areas. So in this map, we have pulled out just the growth areas, and this is really where we're talking a lot of this new housing, where that should be focused. And specifically dealing with housing is going to be the LIVE goal in the plan. And there's a lot of different objectives in that plan, but the one that we're primarily focusing on today is to provide opportunities for a diverse housing mix that complements community character and contributes to vibrant, safe, and inclusive neighborhoods. I think you might have heard us mention the A+ Homes initiative. And that's an initiative that the county created to promote different styles of housing with 5 different A's. So we think housing should have all of these. It should be attractive, affordably priced, adaptable, aging-friendly, and accessible. Delving a little bit more into that, by attractive, we mean designed, constructed, and maintained to be compatible with local community character. So not necessarily talking about a specific design style, but that's going to fit in with existing neighborhoods. Affordably priced, available at attainable sale and rental prices, no more than 30% of household income should be spent on housing-related costs. Aging-friendly, able to meet the diverse needs of seniors. Adaptable, able to evolve with market forces, changing demographics, buying and renter preferences, and environmental conditions. Also accessible, by which we mean connected to jobs, service, transit, amenities, and important community facilities. So the missing middle report is really focusing on that attractive goal, which once again is designed, constructed, and maintained to be compatible with local community character. So going back to that goal that we talked about, that word community character comes up a lot. And what do we mean by community character in Chester County? What is Chester County's community character? In other words, what is our type? I pulled some pictures just to sort of look at this and see what that's like. And we're pretty varied. Chester County has a lot of single family houses detached in various settings. Some of those are more rural and agricultural. Some of those might be new developments, more established suburban neighborhoods, and also some developments, single family detached at greater densities. We're also going to see different types of housing such as twins. I love this picture because you sort of have the larger separated housing up top and then you have the twins. So, other types of twins, and you're gonna have some new and old twins as well. We're also gonna have other types of housing such as multiplexes, smaller multiplexes. Some duplexes, townhomes of all different sizes and all different shapes, different older and newer. Even an ADU in there every now and then. And also some different styles of apartments, both newer and older. And then I also wanted to look at what we're currently building. So starting with talking about a little bit more of the data. Single family detached units have been built pretty steadily from 2010 to 2020. That's that orange line. Apartment units are becoming increasingly more common. Those are those multifamily unit builds. That's that light gray line. And then more frequent has become the single family attached units, such as townhomes and such. You see that in the dark gray where it's been increasing since 2016. I wanted to pull some pictures as well about what we're building because I think data only tells one part of the story, usually. And so you're seeing, again, lovely different types of single family detached, townhomes, apartment buildings. So this is called missing middle, and I wanted to go over what do we mean by missing, because we have really lovely types of housing that's being built in Chester County. Those apartments and single family, just really lovely options. So when you actually look at it, I think what you're seeing is you're seeing single family attached and detached really being at these larger scales. So while the data might be showing that we're building attached units, a lot of those are not going to be that missing middle or what we used to create, which is a lot of those smaller townhomes, ADUs, multiplexes. On the other side, you're seeing larger apartment complexes being built. So what we're really seeing is sort of very large and very small sort of things, or more dense and less dense, and not a lot in between. And so Daniel Perelik coined a term called missing middle housing, which is to describe multi-unit buildings at scale to existing areas within walking neighborhoods. And I think it's important to note that missing middle housing has specific forms, but they also need to be at the right size and in walkable neighborhoods. The word missing was used because the housing is currently illegal to build in many places since 1940s, and that's due to zoning restrictions. And middle because the housing is on the spectrum between that single family detached units and mid and high rise apartment buildings. I did want to make a point that missing middle is mixed in. I think this graphic sometimes does a little bit of a disservice because it makes it seem like you have single family on one side, apartment on the other, and then in the middle, you're going to have those different housing types. And really what we're talking about is having these different housing types in the same neighborhood as appropriate to the existing communities. So different mixed in. And what missing middle is, a good way to think about it, is it's going to be the same kind of scale on the outside. It's going to look compatible with those neighborhoods. It's just going to have a few more units internally. Also, what we're really talking about is housing diversity and choices. So we're not talking about not building those apartments or not building those single family homes. Those are an integral part of our housing in Chester County. We're just talking about increasing diversity and choices of housing so that people can continue to live in Chester County as their needs might change and their incomes might change. So I want to delve a little bit more into what our type is, because the Missing Middle website, which I do encourage everybody to check out, it's got some really great information, but it is specific to California. So we wanted to take that concept and really delve into what it would look like in Chester County. We identified 12 types. There's 10 you're seeing in pictures. We've combined a few. So you're going to have the accessory dwelling units, housing conversions, and adaptive reuse, which are sort of two different ones, twins, townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, medium multiplexes, cottage courts, and lived work, as well as courtyard. Going over what these are a little bit more so we understand what these different types are. The first is the accessory dwelling units. People might know these as granny flats, garage units. Those are all going to be accessory dwelling units. And those are secondary attached or detached units that are going to have private amenities included with bathroom and cooking. And those units can be accessed with in the main building, or they can have a separate entrance, or they can be fully detached. And they're going to appear as a single family home on the outside. Here are some examples of Chester County ADUs. So these are pretty prevalent already in Chester County. I believe all these are in Westchester, but they do exist in other places in the county as well. Single family housing conversions are going to be when you take a single family unit that'll be under one ownership and then convert it to multiple apartments. So those are not going to be condos usually, those are usually going to be on one ownership. Unlike ADUs, which I just discussed, that may convert part of a primary residence into a secondary unit, housing conversions are going to have one primary unit and convert those into multiple units. So it's no longer going to be primary, secondary, it's going to be multiple units. And from the outside, once again, that's going to look like a single family home. And here are some housing conversions examples in Chester County. Again, from the outside, you're generally not going to be able to tell what those, if those are one family or multiple. Most of the time when you look at those are just going to have multiple mailboxes or utility meters, and that's how you're going to be able to tell that those are housing conversions. Next one is twin. I think we're very familiar with those in Chester County. Those are 2 units with 1 shared vertical wall and 3 open sides with external entrances. Twins are also known as duplexes side by side in other parts of the community or in parts of the nation, and they can be located on one or separate parcels. So missing middle twins generally lack frontal garages, and from the outside, twins appear as small to medium single unit houses. Again, all sorts of different twins in Chester County, very commonly built. Townhomes are generally like twins, but they're 3 or more. They're going to be 2 or more units which share an adjacent vertical wall. And each unit will be located on a separate parcel and have separate ownership. Missing middle townhomes have street entrances and do not include garages technically, or traditionally usually. And traditionally townhomes are also known as row homes around here often. And from the outside, missing middle townhomes will look like a row of individual differentiated single family units. Again, pretty common form. And I did want to take some pictures of specifically missing middle townhomes. And this is when I think we are building a lot of townhomes currently, but they're at sizes and scales that are a little too large to be considered missing middle often. So townhomes, the form is just as important as well as the type. Duplexes, which are going to be 2 units stacked on top of each other. Units do not share floors and they have separate external entrances. From the outside, units have the same appearance as a small to medium single family detached house. Entrances can be placed on the rear off of an alley to keep uniform front appearance. And stacked duplexes can be well suited for skinnier lots where townhomes may not fit. So a few examples of duplexes in Chester County. These are a little bit less common in Chester County. I think they're found more often in Montgomery County currently. Triplexes, I think, are one of the least common types we see around here, but are appropriate to certain areas in the county. And these are going to be 3 units stacked on top of each other. And there can be appropriate for smaller lots again, where townhomes may not fit. And those are going to look like taller 1-unit buildings. So on the left, you have an example in Chester County, which is a housing conversion, but also a housing conversion into a triplex. And on the right, you have an example of actually a triplex. That house that you see sort of towards the left, the back of that picture is actually a triplex that looks like a mansion, and that's out in Montgomery County. Quadplex are going to be 4 connected units, and they're usually going to have 2 units on the first floor with 2 units stacked on top. And entrances can be shared or external. And from the outside, quadplexes can resemble a small apartment building or a large single-family home. So here are some examples of quadplexes and the different forms they can take. The bottom one is in Montgomery, and the other ones are going to be in Chester County. And then cottage court is going to be multiple detached 1 to 2 story structures oriented around a shared courtyard. So here's an example of a cottage court. And then courtyards are going to be slightly different. They're going to be single 1 to 2, 3.5 story structures with multiple units oriented around a courtyard. I apologize, those are actually going to be switched as far as what those images are. And those can be side by side or stacked and may have internal entrances located off the courtyard. So Multiflex Medium is going to be a single 2 to 2.5 story building with 5 to 12 units. And the units can be stacked or side by side for the multiplexes. So here's a few examples of what multiplexes look like, and these are all in Chester County. And then adaptive reuse is similar to single family conversions, except it's going to be conversions of commercial or industrial properties into residential apartments. So are usually going to be more units, and those can be rental or condos or a combination of both. It's really more about the form. And this is a pretty common occurrence and a common form in Chester County. I think we've done some really great work with adaptive reuse in the county. And then live work, which is also not very common in Chester County, which is going to be a living unit above a fire separated ground floor workspace. So live work units may be individual buildings or multiple units in a single building, and they're going to be residential and commercial portions are going to be separated. And here's an example of the live work. So now that I've talked about the types, I think it's important to understand what they are, but I think it's equally important to know how can we actually achieve those, how can we encourage those, and for that I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Chris Patriarca.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming out with us. Again, Lily just made a very good overview of what exactly we're talking about. We're talking about the various types of housing, and what I'm going to briefly go through is how do we get there, some strategies to deal with each of these identified issues, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Pack to talk about her experiences as a builder with these and proceed from there. So with that, here we go. The 4 areas that were specifically identified and looked at with this include market demand, construction costs, zoning, and resident opposition. And we'll go through each of these individually. So the first with market demand. First thing to say is this isn't just a Chester County issue. This is a national issue. It goes back to simply there's just not enough supply to meet the current demand. Some of this can be traced back to the 2008-2009 recession. Construction halted for the most part, and we just haven't caught up since then. What you're seeing on the graph really illustrates this in a nutshell within Chester County, especially recently. The cost of housing continue to increase with the inventory dwindling and going down further. So it's something, again, we're still catching up really from the recession, and we're still not there. Next, specific to costs, as Libby mentioned previously, we do have a report that just went live that goes into depth on this topic with construction costs and things like that. So I encourage folks to go to our website and check that out. But the big thing to understand with this is most of these costs are things that are really outside the control of what a municipality can and can't do. It's market driven, being lumber costs, labor costs, so on and so forth. But there are other soft costs and areas that can be impacted, in terms of streamlining processes, eliminating some risk and things like that to make the process better to ideally work through that. Next, with zoning, again, Libby mentioned this previously. The biggest thing with this is when you see these forms, most of it predates the war. Most of this stuff hasn't really been constructed since World War II, before zoning. And the issue is when we're talking more than one unit within most residential zoning districts, unless it's multifamily, it's just not going to be permitted. And being in Chester County, that's the dominant zoning we see countywide. It's more that single family residential. So we're going to get more into this with the forthcoming report, but that's a big barrier. And then finally, resident opposition. This isn't just Chester County, this is the whole country. And, this could be everything from, taking away green space, building green fields, to concerns with school populations, to traffic concerns, whatever it may be. There's always valid concerns from residents that you have to get through in order to get any of these types of things constructed. So kind of looking at this, how do we get there? We do have several recommendations to go through when we're talking about this. And again, this is going to be fleshed out further in that forthcoming report that we're presently working on. So with that, the 4 areas that we're looking at specifically are to zone for the missing middle housing, to encourage infill development, provide resources, and to address resident concerns. So specific to zoning for missing middle housing, the first we have is talking about adding to allow the missing middle housing types by right. And what I'll say about this is, again, as was previously mentioned, the missing middle types are about form. They're about fitting within the existing community, not necessarily to stick out, but to be pretty indistinguishable. And for municipalities to weigh which of these types makes sense and which could be allowed potentially by right to really, give more opportunities to allow that to be developed. The second, it's parking. Parking is always an issue, especially in more of our boroughs. But to really look at that, as we're kind of transitioning and looking at how we get from place to place differently, reducing parking minimums may be appropriate. With so many more people working from home or having things delivered, 2.5 parking spaces per unit may not make sense everywhere. And to build in some flexibility to consider that on a case-by-case basis. The next, where you say minimize non-related resident living restrictions, as a former zoning officer myself, that is impossible to enforce. It shouldn't be in there. The use isn't who lives in there, the use is the use. So whether or not the person's related to you or not is irrelevant. So really trying to get that out, I think, is another important thing, especially when we're talking about things such as accessory dwelling units. And then finally, all our municipalities, they do what they can to make the development process as clear as possible, but it's always a work in progress. And again, to make sure that the rules, the regulations, everything there is logical, makes sense, so that it doesn't create additional delay and issues for folks trying to construct this. Encouraging infill development. Now, this is something that is specific really to our growth areas that we're talking about this. Again, it's illustrated on our Landscapes 3 growth map within our growth areas. So we're not talking about countywide, but really focusing these missing middle types within the growth areas, which again are our boroughs, our suburban centers, and the suburban areas that radiate out from our boroughs. Next, we're talking about the build missing middle in existing neighborhoods. Again, as part of infill, we're not talking about new greenfield development, but opportunities to build these types of housing options within the existing built environment. Again, you see this already within more of our older boroughs, such as Westchester, Phoenixville, Kennett Square. But really rethinking this, going into the townships and some of our suburban areas that, anything from an ADU may be appropriate to a twin. Again, we're not suggesting this everywhere. The municipalities need to really kind of look at what makes sense for their community in order to do this. Next, talking about maximizing existing infrastructure. This again, since we're talking about infill, the developers not having to build additional roads, not having to put in new sewers, not having to do these types of things which add significant costs, as well as costs that go back to the municipality when we're talking about long-term maintenance of sewer lines, of roads and whatnot. So it maximizes that existing infrastructure without continuing to sprawl it out. It further encourages that resident growth near existing amenities, those things that mentioned earlier that folks want to be close to, be it for recreation, going out to eat, or as we have an aging population, being closer to community services and healthcare facilities. So that's what we mean by being near amenities. And then finally, really with the infill, it goes into minimizing also development on open space sites, which goes into really the ethos of Chester County wanting to preserve so many open areas. And when we're looking at encouraging this type of development within our growth areas, our existing infrastructure areas, it can further those goals as well as it relates to open space preservation. Provide resources. The first with this is the concept of developing pattern books. And what we mean by that is this isn't a one size fits all. What makes sense for Westchester may not make sense for Phoenixville, may not make sense for a different township, so on and so forth. So it's really to work with the community to determine, how can this work within our community and how can we build this that makes sense for our unique needs. Next, the provision of density bonuses. This is something we have an e-tool on our website. I encourage folks to check that out. And basically what this would afford developer the ability to create additional units, but those bonuses are tied to some other important initiative for the community to achieve. So there could be a density bonus for provision of an affordably priced unit, a provision that requires open space area for public use and so on and so forth. So again, it's kind of a sweetener that may encourage establishment of some of these smaller types that make sense. And then the third, with resources, this isn't a foreign concept. It's being done all across the country, and there's lots of great resources already out there available. Like I said, we're going to have more of this on our website with the Planning Commission, but other areas to really look at that have done a lot of work in this are through AARP, DVRPC, Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission has done a lot of work on this, and really to show, again, there's not a one size fits all with this. There are many different ways to look at approaching this and to address it, and that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot already out there. And then finally, looking at addressing resident concerns. The big thing with this is if you have your residents coming to you with serious and honest concerns about these type of issues, it's important to listen, understand, and work to solutions as best practicable for the municipality and the residents. If it's just being brushed off, it's going to create more problems. And that's not how this should work. I mean, you need to understand and work from that. Next, when we're saying ensure all stakeholder voices are heard, what we're specifically talking about that is you hear the voices of the people yelling at the meeting. You're not hearing the voices of the folks who may need this the most. Maybe folks who can't come to a meeting because they have to go to work. It may be that single mother who can't get to the meeting because they're taking care of their children. And it's really to make sure that it's not being lost sight that the only stakeholders aren't those folks screaming at you in the meeting. It's a greater community, and to make sure that those voices are heard as well. And then finally, knowing the impacts of missing middle homes, and this is more like what we're trying to do at the Planning Commission, is to illustrate that, hey, these aren't scary concepts. They already exist. I think the two best examples to think about when we're talking about this are with accessory dwelling units is one, where you can go to various places throughout the county, and these units are functioning as residential units that aren't causing issue. They're just there. The other is with adaptive reuse, where you'll see an older structure that may be converted into 3 or 4 units. For all intents and purposes, looking from the street, it's still just that singular home, but now there's multiple units in it. You know, as we get more examples of things like triplexes and quadplexes to show that these can be appropriate, that's what we're talking about. So really kind of paint that picture to take away some of the fear. So with that, we're not to questions yet. I want to turn this over to Sarah Peck of Progressive New Homes, who's actually built a lot of these kinds of things, as well as Nanette Whitsett, who's with South Media United in her experience in the community, really looking to create more opportunities for folks in the community to have housing options that wouldn't have come without her group really going to the borough and saying, we want this. So with that, I'll turn this over to Sarah and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I am here to talk about how this actually can get done and done successfully. And not only, as Libby said, are we looking for attractive, affordable housing, attractive missing middle housing, but also it can be affordable. And it can meet a market need that's growing. It can be designed from scratch to deal with modern energy efficiency and the market demand for fewer steps, for example, all kinds of other things that we can build in when it's brand new. And my company, Progressive New Homes, has actually gotten approved over 500 units that meet this definition in more than 5 localities in Chester County, Montgomery County, and Delaware County. So I guess I'm here to prove that it actually can be done. And I'm here to tell you a little bit on how it can be done, how the economics work, and then later we'll talk about an actual case study of one in media I'm building right now, which was a partnership effectively with local community, and Nanette will tell you more. Okay, so these, I'm going to showcase three examples. This is in Lower Marion Township, and it's called Danley. It looks like twins. In fact, there are 2 homes in each of these halves. So there's 4 in what looks like 2. And as you can see, it fits in very nicely with the existing housing. So the streets, this is the definition of missing middle, in that the streetscape blends right in with the existing historic homes. Oops. And on the other side is the hospital, Bryn Mawr Hospital. So it's a perfect transition from a higher density institutional commercial use to the existing single family that you saw before in this picture here. And it fits in very nicely and fills in an unsightly gap that was the streetscape. And in massing, you can see how it works. I call this a piggyback style. You can see that there's house on the top and a house on the bottom. The one on the bottom having a front porch, and the one on the top having a side balcony. And in the back, you can see that everybody has their own garage and their own driveway. And so by the time we were done with guest parking as well as the garages, we had 2.5 parking spaces per unit. Everybody seems to think that because it's walkable and near a train that we should have fewer parking spaces, but the market isn't quite there yet, and they still want their parking even though they can walk everywhere. The density is 28 units on 2 acres. And that sounds like a lot, but actually you're taking advantage of the existing street, as I think Chris was mentioning. So you actually can get away with a higher density without it feeling dense. And this is just a typical photo of the upper home, and you can see because there's light on some of these three sides, you have, and it's all open, you have a very spacious feeling, even though you have 2 units in a building. Now the second project I wanted to highlight, these are examples of how it can be done. There's all kinds of other ways. And I do want to give a shout out to Ray, because Ray, I don't know if you know this, but you got me into this in the first place, way back when in Downingtown with your idea. We sat there brainstorming one day and kind of came up with this idea, and it's been evolving ever since. So this is what I call front and back type of home plus a piggyback. So this is a combination. It's all home ownership. Almost all first-time home buyers. In fact, there were only first-time home buyers now I think about it. And what you have here is in each of these buildings, again, it looks like a townhouse, but actually there's 2 in each unit. And the ones in the middle are the front and backs, and the ones on the ends are what I call the piggybacks. So here in massing form, you can see that the middle, the purple and the green are the front and the back, and the ends are the townhouse over top of a smaller townhouse, if you will, the piggyback. So we have 2 and 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths to 2.5 baths for the very top unit. And at the time, this was very good pricing for new construction. It was $140,000 to $170,000, and that was accomplished with some grants that lowered the cost. The density was 24 units on a third of an acre. Does that say a third of an acre?
3/4.
3/4 of an acre, excuse me. But it fit right in. What I really like about that original photograph is that right down here, and if you can see it, there's an existing, one of these historic mansions that Norristown used to be famous for on DeKalb Street. And this just fits right in, and partially it's because of the colors we chose and a lot of the brick and that kind of thing. And then everybody has their own garage, some of whom have 2-car garages, so that increased the parking a little bit. And it was tucked behind so that you didn't interrupt the streetscape. Everybody has their own front door, which is another hallmark of home ownership. You want your own front door, you want your own space, your own garage. This is for sale housing. And with special financing, we were able to accommodate 100% of the median to 120% of the median. And here's an example, if you can try to follow this. This is the front unit in the front back footprint. So a 2-car tandem garage on the first floor. And then they have their living space with their kitchen, powder room, so forth, and then 2 bedrooms and a bath. Very, very kind of compact, sweet space, but for a first-time buyer, beats renting, and it's a great place to grow some equity, grow some roots in the neighborhood, and trade up from there eventually. This is a view of the rear unit, so you can see because of the taller windows and the higher ceilings, it still has a sense of space and light, even though you only have light on one side, which is the rear. And the top floor is a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, very, 1,600 square foot unit that had the garage on the first level. And then this is the one that I told you was a piggyback. So this one's over the smaller home, but a very sizable house. And we even had a couple families in there. Now, this was what the site in Norristown looked like before I got it. They were obviously derelict buildings, and there's an existing building that I want to highlight because that building is still here. So this person in the middle fixed up their house, and then we built brand new on either side of those. We obviously took down the other buildings. And this was actually stacked townhouses. Now, that's a lot of steps, so not everybody wants that many steps, but the lower home actually was sold almost exclusively to seniors who, they had 1 flight of steps, but they could walk right in. This is the basic footprint of what I had here to work with. And we came up with a design of 3 townhouses and then another layer on top of those 3 townhouses. So there's a total of 6 in each of these buildings and surface parking in the back. In the modeling, it's, you can see the different colors. So this is 3 townhouses, one of which enters on the side by itself, and the upstairs enters, I'm sorry, this is reversed, I apologize. This is where the lower townhouse enters, and then the upper 3 units enter in a common hallway on the side there. And this is a view of the inside of one of the homes. You can see that we are 2 and 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, as little as 1,100 square feet, but it's on 2 levels. And this was 12 units on 1/3 of an acre. And the average price, again, because of some subsidy that we received, was as low as $135,000. They're reselling for more though. And then there's always a way to like insert some pocket parks in each of the communities to give it a little gathering place, a sense of community and a sense of ownership, that sense of space. So we often provide the grills and seating and the mailboxes and things that can draw people together and create a little bit of open space. With that, I'd like to turn things over to Nanette Whitsett. Nanette is a community leader in Nether Providence Township, which is right outside of Media Borough. And she kind of rose up and took charge when it came to a new development that I'm working on that's underway currently. And after we're done, we'll show you that development and the product of Nanette's work. And it's really quite an interesting story and an unusual one in light of all the discussion about resident opposition. So I think she's here to tell you firsthand what success looks like. So I'm going to let Nanette speak and then I'll come back and tell you about Media Walk.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. The story begins with the community meeting at South Media Firehouse. It was there the community was told that the developer, Sarah Peck, would be building 10 to 12 single-family homes with the price tag starting at $500,000. The community was told this was by right zoning and pretty much a done deal. You see, the lot was zoned as R3, which according to the township zoning codes, only allowed for single-family dwellings to be put on the land parcel. Then one Saturday in October, I met with the developer along with 2 other supporting neighbors. It was there Sarah showed us pictures of her other projects, which she showed there. And one that had the look and feel of the community of South Media. However, the current zoning would not allow for that kind of development. So we went from not in my backyard, which was to stop the building of the $500,000 single homes, to yes in my backyard. I envision the higher density, more affordable price homes that would blend in with the existing older homes in our community. Well, that would require rezoning the land parcel from R3 to R5, which on its face seemed like an impossible feat. As luck would have it, there was existing zoning in the adjacent community that allowed for the envisioned project to go forward on the land parcel. So I approached Sarah with the question, if I could guarantee community support for rezoning the land parcel to R5 zoning, would she be willing to build a development that looked like her other projects? After thinking it over, Sarah said yes. She would suspend her by right plan for a period of time and work with the community on the R5 zoning. At first, the township commissioners were opposed and offered little to no support for my endeavor. In fact, they were downright resistant to the notion of rezoning the land parcel. It was as if they were okay with the developer building 10 to 12 single-family homes priced at $500,000 plus $100,000 in our community. They saw no problem with the by right zoning that allows such a thing to happen in our backyard. Well, that just didn't sit well with me. And in fact, it caused me to have a lot of sleepless nights, and I've wrestled with the notion. There was no way I could do nothing and just sit back and let that happen. So I reached out to our ward commissioner to see what could be done to stop the building of the single homes. He was personally not afraid of higher density plan, but told me that I would have to show community support for an alternative plan. It was then I formed a group called South Media Neighbors United. We drafted a petition and went door to door asking for neighbor support in getting the land parcel rezoned. We collected over 100 signatures. I then organized several community meetings and had the developer present the proposed project to show community members what an alternative R5 plan would look like. Along with group members as well as supporting neighbors, we carried the assigned positions to the commissioners' meeting, only to be told that rezoning is a tough issue. Meanwhile, there were some neighbors from surrounding neighborhoods who angrily voiced their opposition to a higher density plan, which led the commissioners to be reluctant to openly lend their support for the rezoning. It was beginning to turn into a them against us. The township meetings kind of turned into a circus. Neighbors fueled with biases were given a platform to openly express their tainted viewpoints in opposition to a higher density plan. All the community of South Media wanted was to see more homes on a smaller lot at a more affordable price tag. What could be so wrong with that? Finally, I was able to gain political support from a few commissioners who began to lean in favor of an alternative plan for the land parcel, in spite of the pushback from surrounding neighbors. What helped that happen was that the developer offered to address some existing stormwater issues plaguing the neighborhood. So it became politically possible to support the rezoning with those concessions on stormwater management. Nevertheless, we as a group kept the pressure on. Members of South Media Neighbors United attended every planning commission meeting, every commissioners meeting, every zoning board meeting to advocate for the revised plan. I even went to the Delaware County Planning Commission to speak in support. At one planning commission meeting, I actually presented an article on the missing middle housing, which I have found online to add support for the need of this type of higher density development within the township. I never knew there was a name for what I was envisioning, but missing middle exactly expressed the type of housing we wanted to see here. Through collaboration with the developer who took my word, thank you, Sarah, we stayed the course. The land parcel was successfully rezoned to R5. Although we advocated for more units to offset the price tag, the township pushed back against the higher density and finally agreed on 25 units, 22 stacked duplexes and 3 single homes. Media Walk is a welcome addition to the community of South Media.
Good job.
Sarah's back.
So you see, it can be done. I would say the operative word in that whole story is trust. I trusted Nanette and she trusted me. And in the end of the day, that's what it was about, because we both had to take a big risk on this. And I was putting aside a by right plan, to try to make something that I thought was better, work. So here's the result of our collaboration. This is This is the site, and it's really important for you to understand this site because the whole concept of missing middle will mean much more when you see this. By the way, this is the last 5 acres undeveloped in Nether Providence Township, which is a second class, first class, anyway, it's a township with commissioners. And this is the site here in the middle. And these were larger lot homes, half-acre homes here around it on this side, built primarily in the 70s and 60s. And then on this side, as you can see, it's higher density. This is South Media over here with lots is 6,000, 7,000 square foot in size. And this was right in the middle, and there was a park behind it called Southwoods Park. So what we were looking at doing was trying to put in stacked duplexes here using the R5 zoning, as Annette mentioned, that would transition between the larger lots here and the South Media lots to its immediate west. Today, we're under construction. This is the first phase that's built. And as you can see, it faces, this time the zoning allows us to face the street, which is so much friendlier than the R3 zoning where the rears of the homes faced the street, and it was very unfriendly. The way this works in plan is the first floor is completely without any steps whatsoever. So it's attracting seniors or people who don't want quite as many steps. And actually it's also attracting, because of the price tag being 300,000 or a little under, it's attracting first-time home buyers as well. And above, this can flex to a townhouse. It can be a flat or a townhouse, and it can grow even bigger to 3,000 square feet. So this is it looks like a single family home. You know, this is actually one home down below, and this is the other home above. So it definitely resembles a single family detached. On the side, you can see the entrance for the upper home right here. And as I say, the upper home can grow and attract all kinds of demographics. It has elevators. It can have older folks, younger folks, families. And then in the rear, you can see we have a single car garage for the home that's on the lower level, and a double car garage for the upper level. And we have 3.6 parking spaces per unit. And here it is, a rear view of the garage. Some of these folks have put up a roof deck on top. They grew that, the back, you can't see it from this height, but there's another room up there. That's what makes it, you can even have, it's really a 3-bedroom plus a bonus room. And all of these share in common that the owner suite is on the main living room. And then here, I think you can sort of see from the aerial, this is South Media here, and you're looking back towards the larger lots here. And we kept the woods, there's 2 acres of woods that remained as part of the parcel. And that's an amenity for the residents. Here are some photos of the upper home. You can see how big it gets because it's got light on 4 sides, and there's nothing interfering with it. So you're looking back towards, there's actually another family room back in there. And this is looking from the kitchen. You can see there's the living room. And not shown is the owner's bedroom, which is right off here. So it's very convenient for an empty nester. Or a senior, or somebody who wants an elevator to not have to worry about any steps. So I just want to address for a minute, if I could, the economics and why this would work for a developer. Why would a developer want to do this kind of housing? And it's really important, I think, for the affordability discussion, because it is hand in glove with the missing middle. When you have more homes on the same amount of land, you are reducing your land cost, of course, per unit, and you're also reducing all that infrastructure cost per unit. So that allows for a lower sales price. Why would a developer care about a lower sales price? Why wouldn't they want just a higher sales price and make as much profit as they possibly could? Well, when they do that, they have a narrower market, people who can afford the higher prices. And they have more competition because the zoning is primarily pushing these larger lots, higher priced homes. When you have a lower price, you're widening your market, so you're accelerating your sales price. And when that happens, all your indirect costs go down as well. So, your interest carry, your marketing expense, your overhead, all of that goes down as a function of each unit because you're selling faster. So your overall costs are further lowered. And yes, you might be selling less, charging less per home, but in total, you're reducing your risk because you're going so much faster. And that's also very important to a developer who's borrowing money from a bank, and risk is definitely a factor. What I like to say is density is just an abstract number. It really, how does it feel? And we've proven today that it can feel like a single family home. And the fact that there's two families within the same structure really should not matter other than on a theoretical basis. And just for clarity, I know Libby talked about 30% of income is the metric for what's affordable, but really in this day and age, it's the other metric, which is the total debt as a function of income. So when people have student loans or car payments or other things that factor into their affordability, we look at that total number, the income, not just the mortgage as a percentage, but the mortgage plus all their other debts as a percentage. And really the metric most banks use is 43%. So if you can only afford if 43% of your income is what can go for a mortgage, counting all your other debts, then here's what it looks like for 100% median income person who only has 5% to put down. And there are products out there now that you don't have to go FHA, but basically what we're saying is that here are the median incomes by household size over here. A one-person household median income is $66,200, and that applies to all 4 counties. 2 people, $75,600. 3 people, $85,100. 4 people, $94,500. And they have debts, and I just made some arbitrary assumptions that a family or 2 people working would have more debt than a single person. So that's why I just made these arbitrary assumptions about debt. Somebody has a single person, I said, had $500 a month in other debts, and a family or 2 people would have $1,000. And this is the house price they can afford here, right? Which is $245,000 all the way up to $358,000. Not quite enough to get to that median sale price that we just looked at a second ago. And this assumes 5% down. Of course, if you put 20% down, let's say you have a family member who give you a gift and you can borrow less, well, then you actually can afford pretty decent price tag housing, $330,000 up to $480,000. That's a lot of money to put down, but people who save and, that and have gifts and things like that could do it. I guess my point is we're selling these houses in Media Walk for the lower unit anyway, around $300,000, and we've got options in it's maybe $320,000. But that's, I think, achievable even at a market rate with today's interest rates and today's motivated banks who want to help out. So I do think it's there. I think the affordability is there if you can develop this kind of housing, which I think, the other thing I want to mention too is that the zoning, which is usually the biggest constraint, might be of interest to some of the people in this audience. In those examples I showed you and in other examples, the zoning either existed already and was on the books and no one even knew they had it, like Lower Marion Township. There was a zone called 2-family semi-detached. Well, we proved that we said, this is 2-family semi-detached, and they went along with that. Or it requires a tweak to the text. Again, you need some support from the community, but many a time we take existing zoning, we tweak it. Sometimes we write it from scratch, which is a collaboration with the town. And sometimes we have to go to the zoning hearing board and get a variance, which is possible to do. It is possible to do it, not your first choice, but we've done that too. So the zoning, where there's a will, there's a way, I would have to say. I think the zoning is feasible. And so as I was saying, we can be both affordably priced and meet a growing market need. And here are some real life people who represent the different demographics we're serving with this product type. Young families, empty nesters, seniors, young couples without children, singles, a lot of single women who are actively buying in the market. And so that gives you, I think, an overview of how this can really happen and be a real life thing. So who am I turning this over to?
Yeah, and I'll actually have you stand up here, and if I can have Chris and Annette come back up and just stand behind me, I'm gonna open it up for questions, and it does look like we have some online questions. So the first one I will answer is going to be, will the slides and a recording be shared afterwards? And yes, they will be. And how is Chester County defining affordable housing? I think we sort of talked about that one as well, which is going to be that 30%. So affordable, we're really talking about affordably priced at different incomes. So those were the only questions I have online. If anybody else has those out there, feel free to put those in. And does anybody have questions here?
Yeah, I had a question about zoning and, changing the zoning. I think you had mentioned, a lot of that, is from the 40s. I know in ours in Westchester, a lot of that dates to the 70s, but it is zoning that reflects obviously the needs of the past that doesn't necessarily reflect, the current needs today, and definitely not the future needs. I'm wondering, as a planning commission member, are there resources with Chester County or other places to go to help us? It's really hard to change things in these, in any of these municipalities. How best do we move forward on, altering our zoning and updating our zoning to reflect today's needs?
Yeah, we do have a lot of different resources online, and I'd also just encourage anybody to reach out to us. We're here. We have a lot of great planners that can help you with that as well. Chris, do you have anything else that you want to say specifically on that?
I mean, I would add specifically what Nanette did. Like, the issue is always with the political body and not necessarily willing to be able to go out on that limb. Fearful of repercussion that if we go from that R2 to R5, what can happen? But building that community support as Nanette and her group were able to do, I know it's not the right term, but it gives them cover to be able to do what the community wants. I will say it's rare in my experience to have community members say we want more density. But I truly believe there are more people that would like to see that because you do have so many folks. Again, it's not just Chester County, but parents, their children can't move back home because they can't afford to be there. And I think people see that. And it's just really, again, not always listening to everybody who's just yelling at you, but reaching that entire community to really paint that picture that this is dynamic. There's needs for everybody. It's not just what we've been seeing for the last 50, 60 years.
Yeah, Chris was sharing a really interesting anecdote with me earlier, which is he heard somebody go into a meeting and say, raise your hand if you've ever lived in a rental unit or know somebody currently who lives in a rental unit or this type of housing. And I think almost anybody in any room would raise their hand for that. And I think illustrating that as well and helping to illustrate that to people is really important and sharing resources.
And another thing about zoning is being persistent and going to the meetings. And I know, for example, the zoning board in Nether Providence Township is pretty archaic and rigid and set in their way. And Sarah and I became a team. And so there was times when they were like, well, I'm just a puppet for Sarah, as if I couldn't speak on my own and hadn't been doing my own research. I tease her and say I learned land development and usage 101 because I did a lot of research online. That's how I stumbled across the article and I sent it to him. I said, is this relatable? And when I brought that to the zoning board meeting, they were just like pushed it aside. But Sarah was tenacious in believing in the product that she had and it would fit. And I was just as motivated to see it happen. So we kept the pressure on. It took 2 years.
No, less than that.
Less?
Yeah, it took, in our world, in development worlds, it was lightning fast. It was only 6 extra months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it seemed like 2 years.
I have a question. You talked a little about a key part of that process was when a couple of the commissioners started to turn, if you will, to be more favorable. Can you talk more about how that actually went about? I mean, that seemed that was a key step in that. I would say.
Well,
Yeah.
that came by an email where our ward commissioner, I put him on the spot. Like, are you going to support the community of South Media?
Right.
Or are you going to be swayed by people in surrounding neighborhoods that it doesn't impact?
Right.
You're not talking about gentrifying their community.
Right.
And the fact that you would have allowed 10 single family homes to be built without questioning.
Right.
And getting any feedback from the community. So that just kind of put a little pressure on him. And then Sarah sent some emails and then he was able to get other commissioners to come on board.
Sure.
But for me, it seemed like, in all honesty, it wasn't until just this past election when I was running for school board, one of the commissioners said, you know, I owe you an apology because I was never really committed to the project, but I've seen what was built and I'm really impressed by it. And so I said that, like, I hope that you guys don't end up eating your words when it's all built and done.
Right, that's not.
I think that's an important thing
Yeah.
that there are more of these developments out there, these projects, so that people can see them and see that, you know, this isn't some high-level planning exercise where we're trying to experiment with something. It's like, no, this is what works for these communities and can seamlessly be in there and better those communities. We can do better than, like I said, just the 10. We can have a whole community of 20 plus, so.
Libby, there's a question in the chat.
Thank you.
Instead of the Q&A, it's in the chat.
It's in the chat, thank you.
We have to scroll up just a little bit.
Andrew?
This is a question for Nanette. What are strategies for building resident support for higher density that we can use in other communities? Were there community members you met while knocking on doors who were skeptical that you eventually won over? If so, how did you persuade them and build trust?
Well, there were some community members as we knocked on doors that were skeptic, because the original alternative plan was 32 units. And that seemed to boggle a lot of people's minds. And so from having Sarah do presentations, like I scheduled several community meetings where people in the neighborhood could come and actually see what the alternative plan was. And I referred to it as an alternative plan. So that in itself gave people pause to want to come out and find out what it was she was offering. And some of it was people thinking that she was a developer and it was all about money. And she was somehow using using me as a voice to bamboozle the community into getting something. And even that was part of the planning commissioners were like, well, we're trying to protect South Media, but they weren't, in a sense. So you just have to just keep educating, keep having community meetings, work with the developer, become a collaborative force with your developer. Like one of the neighbors that lives directly next door had issues with her side yard, and Sarah made so many concessions and took her concerns into her choice of developing the one lot to accommodate for the use of her still being allowed to have a side yard. And she also made concessions to our community to give back. So I just say that you have to trust the developer, like Sarah said, and believe in the project and just stay the course.
That, how did you become aware of this project? What was your first?
Because they had a meeting at the firehouse, and as the community goes, everybody was talking about this developer that was coming in and gonna take over the park and build these $500,000 houses, and the township had said it was a done deal. I wasn't at that meeting, but from word of mouth, I heard about it, and it just wrestled my spirit. It was just something that, without even meeting Sarah, I knew that it was a fight that I had to enter into to prevent what I consider to be the total gentrification of the community.
So you sought out Sarah when you heard about this project?
Yes,
You initiated the meeting with her?
yes.
I was skeptical. First of all, let me just say, that community meeting at the firehouse, I organized, and it was a disaster. Everybody was yelling and screaming, and finally they just all walked out, and I was there alone. The community was like, whoa, what happened here? You know, I knew it wasn't going well when I was the only one left in the whole meeting. And then Nanette threw a third party call and said, you know, can we meet with you? We have an idea. And I said, this is a hard enough township to work in. I don't think I'd be open to anything different, because I just honestly didn't put that for prayer. It's a very tough township. And she convinced me to meet, so we met, and you won me over. Maybe I won you over, but you won me over, and that it just went on from there. I took her to the library. We met in the library. I had a zoning book with me, and I said, this is what this means. This is what that means. Here's like education 101 on what zoning is. So she could ask the right questions in the meeting. You know what I mean? Like, she just didn't have the vocabulary. She had the desire, but not the vocabulary. And that enabled her to be more effective when you got educated about zoning.
Yeah, and they were astonished because they were so rigid and so set against what they perceived. Some people perceived it that it was going to be like a project, like a Section 8 type project. And so the zoning board was determined to say that it was by right, that she had a right to build. And I kept saying, yes, she has a right to build, but not in our backyard. And so through learning language through Sarah and being able to talk educatedly to the zoning board, it began to, I think we just kind of warmed out in the end. Because nothing they threw at her deterred her from the goal. And nothing they threw at me deterred me from the mission.
Brian?
Okay, my question is actually for Ray a little bit on stacked townhouses. We've got a couple proposals in Phoenixville on stacked townhouses, and I know you worked with them on the zoning. Did you define that within the zoning, or how do you?
No,
how that's
because
happening?
when we wrote the zoning in Phoenixville was 2013. We didn't envision that as a unit type. So when it was first proposed, we kind of did a form-based code, and so we based it on the building type. So we interpreted that as being a multifamily structure.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the way we got around approving it. And now not to belabor the stacked townhouse thing, but it's going crazy.
Right.
I mean,
we're seeing a lot.
I mean, we probably have about 600 or 700 units that are under, one just got approved and the other's in the pipeline.
Yeah.
And virtually all stacked townhouses.
Yeah.
And one of the things that our zoning board did, that Sarah found
Just that.
a glitch in the wording.
Yeah.
I bet she did.
And she brought it to their attention and the solicitor got involved and they were trying to make it sound like that it wasn't allowing, even the R5 was not going to be allow the type of project that she wanted to do.
Mhm.
And in retrospect, they ended up literally changing the zone in Nether Providence Township
After we got approved.
after she got approved, that no duplexes can be built. Which
So I-
to me is shooting themselves in the foot because in Nether Providence Township, you have Rose Valley and Moylan, and you have a lot of empty nesters now with big 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 square foot homes that because of the taxes, especially our school taxes, they're being taxed out because they're on retirement incomes. And they're looking like, one of the things I presented is that this is where their home is, their garden club, their bridge club. This is where they raise their children. Shouldn't there be homes that they can afford to move into and still keep their social base? And that's one of the things that's important about this missing middle.
So that's a great segue to my question. I'm sure when you had the vision of the change, you were thinking about community members that potentially could be buyers. As it's starting to happen now, what are you seeing in terms of who's buying the homes? Is it folks from the neighborhood or locally or is are you seeing folks from outside the community moving in? What's the initial read on that?
It's been fascinating. We have had such a great cross-section of demographics. We've had downsizers and older folks, primarily from Swarthmore, which is the neighboring town, and from the local area. We've had first-time homebuyers, young couples just getting married, just sort of nesting. We've had single women. We've had actually a family. This is really exciting. We have a family who busy professionals, they don't really want a yard to maintain. I never thought about it. I thought, why would a family like this type of product? Well, they apparently are very motivated by not having to keep up a yard and all that stuff. They can walk to Mediaborough, which is really a nice thing. The husband's parents bought. So now I have intergenerational, which is awesome. I've got the parents, older folks who are downsizing.
Within the same community, you're just.
Yes, right, and so it's so, and they can be near their grandkids. It's like the first cousin of accessory dwelling unit, but it's, you know, and here's another funny one. I have a couple married, I don't know for how long, that are buying two different units. They're married, they're buying two different units, in the same house, same development. So
Well, at least they much like each other.
they want their own space, I guess, but anyway, so everything in between, a broad cross section.
Is it organized as a condo or a homeowners association?
It's a homeowners association, fee simple, it's HUD, so no, it's not a condo.
This story is so exciting, and I want to bring you in to run workshops in Westchester. But my question is kind of on both of these. I think one of the things that I find so attractive about missing middle, incremental development, small development, is, you know, the concept of development being done to communities as opposed to communities shaping their own space and communities taking an active role in the development and gentrification, you know, the value being added to their communities. And I wondered on that question, do you consider, or do you work with you know, buyers and building, you know, communities for them? I know that there are models for that I was thinking the aging population, and that there are so many people that would like to age in place that can't do it in their, you know, current homes. And people are building little communities, but, you know, they're already pre-sold, you know, so that these people have some kind of stake in that development. And then to raise a question, maybe you can speak a little bit to a condo versus homeowners association.
Okay, let me take the second part of your question first. They're very similar, but really it boils down to the ability to get a mortgage more easily. So if you can make something fee simple, which Pennsylvania law allows you to do, even though you have one unit on top of another unit, Pennsylvania is unique in that way. If you can make it fee simple, it's easier in general in the mortgage process. But otherwise it looks, smells, and feels the same. You have a homeowner association board that governs the common areas, and there are guidelines and so forth, but there's other legal distinctions. That's basically it. I would prefer to do fee simple whenever I can. And there's also pre-sale requirements for a lender on a construction project that you don't have with the PUD.
Sure.
With the fee simple. What you're describing as far as the first part of your question is what I would call a custom build. I think if I heard you right, people are specifying how they want their home to be before they buy.
Well, I guess it was a question to you, whether or not you consider or are doing models like that, and how do you work? This is an amazing example of working with community, right? And so I'm wondering, you know, are these units that you're building right now, are these just put on the market? Or are there other ways of working with the community to bring them into that picture?
Right. Definitely. Ultimately, it's a shot in the dark. You have an idea about who the market is. You design to that vision and you just hope for the best, and you build in some flexibility. So if you're not quite right, you can adjust. But before that, you try to get input in focus groups and in feedback in the market, and lots of people who are knowledgeable about what the market wants and isn't able to find. For example, this product doesn't have very many steps. You're talking about stacked townhouses in Phoenixville. That's a lot of steps if you are carrying groceries and trying to get to the top. And if you're an older person or if you're downsizing, that's the last thing you want, right? You're looking for a simpler lifestyle. So this was designed with that type of person in mind. You know, very few steps. It's really hard to build, very, very hard to build, because that takes up a lot of land, and land's very expensive. So to be able to build this kind of product this close in with that few steps and that big a footprint is hard to replicate. But the short answer is you do the best you can, and then you build in flexibility to adjust. I will say that I do see a lot of demand for housing without steps. So a project I have on the boards in Norristown has a flat with 2 townhouses on top. So I still have the senior or the person who doesn't want steps, and then I have a regular two townhouses on top that can appeal to a younger buyer.
I wonder, just to get at, your comments or question a little bit, is there a model out there somewhere where the community is really plugged into the development in a way that is, almost like a bonus? You give the developer a bonus. Okay, you can do this, but you got to reach out to our community first to see if there's some folks who are becoming empty nesters and want to look and to buy, or, they get first option almost type of thing. I'm not sure how you do it, but I think that's, maybe you're getting at that a little bit of somehow figuring out a mechanism that focuses on the local community first, or in some way, or a certain percent of the units.
Particular project, Sarah opened it up to the community of South Media residents first.
So that did happen in this case?
Yes,
Okay,
and then
interesting.
she also had an incentive of $5,000 towards closing cost. Unfortunately, in the community of South Media, it was hard to, either people had existing homes and property from generation, or they were renters who haven't quite realized that home equity is gold. So, because the medium rent in South Media from the man who owns a lot of the property, he's pulling like $1,700 a month in rent. And some of them are in older homes that he went in and did some remodeling, but not enough to really bring it. It still has no bedroom, no closet. And still, some of them still have the bathroom beside the kitchen. So when you think of that, Sarah did a webinar about first-time home buying, and we put it door to door, and I use social media, and still it was hard to get people within the community to want to buy in. And part of it was because for a two-family, the price tag of the upper unit that they felt was too high. But that was because the planning commission fought so hard against the number of units. So each time they beat back a unit, to me, it was like ka-ching, ka-ching, the price is going up. So I think in a way, they kind of knew what they were doing, because the head of the planning commission prided himself on being a developer. Like he gave the speech every time about his golf course development, but he wouldn't budge on the number of units. And I think a lot of it is that if you look at the aerial view of that first picture that just showed the park and the trees, I think this is just my thought, that the township engineer never went out and really took the measurement of the lot. So, because now that it's cleared, you can clearly see that it would have held that amount or a little higher, so that we could have kept the price down. So that has a lot to do with your zoning and planning commission, to make sure that they allow you to put the number of units that are going to allow for the market price of the housing to stay affordable and in reach of the surrounding community. But it's not from any effort that Sarah hasn't put in to get people from within our community to buy.
I wonder if you could speak to the parking requirement journey, sort of as like this foundational requirement. I'm looking at you, Chris, to sort of being able to thicken up neighborhoods. and how do I'm in Kennett Square Borough. There's obviously a big housing issue there and, ADUs and different things that could be part of the answer to that problem. It seems like you have to kind of ease the parking requirements to get there. And so I guess I'm wondering how to initiate that journey or who's doing that well.
It's a tough nut, as you know. If you live in Kennett Square, you live any spots, like it doesn't go away. It's always being dealt with. I think one of the better approaches I've seen as of late, you're seeing more places do this. Traditionally, you look at your zoning ordinance and you have this very static parking table that this uses this, da, 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 da. What you're starting to see is take that table out altogether and just reference various parking manuals, and things like that, because these things are dynamic and change. And as we move forward, and we don't know necessarily what the future is totally going to look like, but it does seem with more of this remote work being permanent, more people having stuff delivered, there may come a time where, we don't need 2.5 spaces. Now it's 1.5 or 1.7, whatever it may be. But having your ordinances set up in such a way that they're more dynamic versus being more that rigid. So it gives you that ability to be a bit more flexible, but still have some control over those spaces. And I think that's probably the most palatable way to do it. I know, not to put you on the spot, Ray, I know Ray's done this kind of stuff throughout his career. But I think that's probably the best way to do it. Because as a resident of Westchester, if I were to go in there right now and say, yeah, I'm not going to give you an extra parking with this, it'd be DOA. But it's really working to find something that gives a little more flexibility for, again, someone like Sarah, so she doesn't have to go to zoning board and request a variance or something like that, which adds to that risk, which there's no guarantee, but having something that's more dynamic could help ease that somewhat.
I will say that in every community, the existing neighborhood is concerned about the loss of parking on the street. So I, as a developer, I'm trying not only to meet the need that I see in the market, but also to alleviate concerns from the existing neighborhood. So I tend to put more parking into the design. And still, it doesn't go, it goes against what you just said, but there's never enough, no matter how much I put in. And I say to people, it's like you can't be too rich, you can't be too thin, and you can never have enough parking. It's like, this is never enough. And I keep adding more and more and more, but somehow it's never enough.
But it could also
I
be.
know it's the opposite of it.
Well, it could also be tied to like the use, like in Sarah's experience, you're building a whole new house. Yeah, 2.5 spots.
Right.
Absolutely. But if you're looking to build an ADU or something, and the parking requirement's 2.5 spaces for a 500 square foot ADU.
Oh, of course, right.
That's too much. And like have something that can be flexible. But
Right.
I agree. We're not getting rid of our cars anytime soon, so.
It does seem like there's an inverse though relationship between affordable housing and parking, right? The parking demands are a huge cost to housing, with land. And, if you are going to require 2.5 per development.
Well, that was actually something in Westchester Borough, I'm probably well aware of, I know Thomas, is the Belton Center project that Dolores brought up. That had a parking reduction for exactly those reasons, because there were so many community members that were using public transit or being able to walk. They're able to demonstrate that, so they could reduce the parking because they don't need it and get more units on the footprint. So you do see that. It's not necessarily that with some of the market rate stuff where they still have their cars, but some of the more affordable projects, there should be a mechanism to allow for that based on certain criteria.
So we did have an online question. I'll read it out. It's an East Pikeland Planning Commission member who's interested in figuring out a way to turn acres of unused shopping center parking lots in their township into affordable building sites for missing middle housing. Would Sarah have any experience, ideas, or suggestions? This is attractive for many reasons, as it would not increase impervious surface and would help revitalize struggling retail.
The person is exactly right. When the key in the end of the day is impervious coverage. So if this is a underutilized site that has parking, that has surface, macadam surface, absolutely, you can figure out a way to redesign that and reconceptualize that into more units and affordable. Of course, you want to make sure it's located near transit and near services and retail and things like that. So, you know, I don't know much about the other development that didn't succeed or anything about it, but it sounded like it was a good combination of all those things.
We did see in Chesterbrook, the shopping center in Chesterbrook redeveloped with, smaller shopping center and with townhouses wrapping around it. So
Right.
there's at least one example in Chester County of that happening.
Very true.
Well, I'd like to thank all of our speakers again for some great presentations. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending. Thank you.
How many
Thank you.
people were attending virtually?